Barston Lakes is such a key venue now on the UK match scene. It plays host to so many qualifiers all throughout the year, and this video is going to be showing you some of the kit, some of the rods, some of the reels, some of the bait, and talking about some of the approaches that you might need to use if you're going to go and tackle this fantastic fishery. Well, feeder fishing on the main lake at Barston is quite varied, to be honest. It is classed as a commercial fishery, but it has got a massive head of silverfish in it as well. As you look at the lake from the clubhouse side, down the right hand side, that is what's referred to as the riverbank, and that's because that's where the river runs down behind those trees. On the left hand bank, you can drive all the way down that bank, so access is much better on the left hand bank. And as you get further and further away from the clubhouse, when you get towards the far end, that is the deepest part of the lake, and there are some pegs there that are almost twice as deep as the rest of the lake. Well, the first part of the lake that you can see is the widest point of the lake. This is just a mass of open water, and it can be a popular place for fish to hold up to, especially in winter if they're going to back off into that open water. Down the right hand side, that's where the early peg numbers are, so it starts at peg 1 and it runs down the riverbank, down that right hand bank, and the last peg on that bank, usually in the matches, is about peg 60, which is down in the deeper water. This is the widest point of the lake, and this is where you can be using rods that are around the 4 metre or 13 foot kind of length, and that's because sometimes you do have to explore that open water, because sometimes it is somewhere where the fish can actually back off to. Now in this area, if you have got a cast long, on one or two of the pegs there you could be casting up to 100 metres because there aren't any anglers opposite you, and when you're fishing on that sort of a range, then I tend to use the 4 metre XD Horizon rod, the 100 gram version. But any sort of rod that's going to allow you to cast those ranges will be key, because sometimes you have got to go out into that open water to chase fish out. Now when I'm fishing out there, I tend to fish with the larger size reels. This is the Horizon 5000, that's what I use when I'm casting out there. And we are targeting carp, so I will always use mono. When you're casting as far as that, then you know it is always better to use a shot leader, and I always tend to use a 4 pound mainline mono actually on the reel, and then a shot leader of anything above 8 pounds. Sometimes it might be 10 pound. It really depends what you're most comfortable with and what kind of weight you're actually casting and how far you're trying to cast. Usually when you're fishing there, we're targeting carp, or always targeting carp and F1s, and that's when we tend to use the method feeder. Now these open method feeders are the ones that I use. These are the ones that have got sides on them, and I think that's really important when you're casting those sort of ranges, because the sides on these feeders just help protect the bait a little bit more on impact on such a long cast. So feeders like that, I don't think they're very suitable for fishing at range. It really needs to be a feeder that's got those sorts of sides on, and for me the largest weight that I will use there is that one, which is 45 gram, and that'll get you out there no problem. Then as you get towards the middle section of the lake, there is actually an island there, and the island is further from the bank on one side than it is the other, so it's not slap bang in the middle of the lake. So if you've pegged over on the right hand side on the river bank, the casting range to that island it's about 35 metres ish. There are some overhanging trees there, so that might hinder your cast a little bit, so be careful with that. But if you are opposite on the other side of the island, on the road side, then you're probably looking at a range of between 70 and 75 metres to that island. But like I said, there are overhangs there as well, so that might hinder you or stop you going really close to that island. And to be quite honest, it's not usually a massive feature to have that island. It looks incredible. It's probably one of the most deceiving islands in the country. It very rarely produces, but it certainly can be a hot spot on the right day. Now for tackling those pegs in the middle of the lake, you're probably looking at a maximum cast of about 65-70 metres. You get any more than that and you're looking at going over halfway, which isn't allowed in the matches, especially when it's double banked. So the kit that I use for that is I then use the 12-foot rod for those pegs for fishing out in the middle. I use a 3.6 metre XC class, and I couple that with the 4000 Horizon reel. Any sort of 12-foot rod should get you out there into the middle. You do need to go equipped with one, because sometimes, certainly through the winter months, the fish can back off to those open water areas. If you're going to be casting shorter than that, like we are doing a lot of the year, certainly through the warmer parts of the year, you might only be casting a feeder 20 to 40 metres. Then I use an 11-foot rod for that. It's the 3.3 metre XS Slim. That's a lovely little rod for it. It's great for catching the bream as well, but it's great for the F1s and the carp as well, where you just plop in a little method feeder in different areas of the swim. And when you get further down the lake towards the deeper water, which is at the far end of the lake, this can really be a hot spot during winter. As you can imagine, some of the pegs there are probably twice the depth of some other areas of the lake. So as you'd expect in winter, the deeps, as they're referred to by some people, can be classed and can be much better pegs if the fish are obviously shoaled up there. Now again, the width here isn't quite as wide as it is in the early pegs, so again, an 11-foot rod with a 4000 reel should allow you to fish anywhere that's within your peg, within the range. So it's just a really nice, simple, nicely balanced setup, because sometimes you might be targeting F1s and sometimes you might be after proper carp. And the other approach that you might find yourself using is a more conventional feeder setup, like a Paternoster rig or a free-running cage rig. The types of feeders that I use when I'm fishing like this are just nice side-weighted cage feeders. The venue is not very deep, it's only about 4 feet deep in most areas, so you don't need a feeder that's got loads of casing around it, if you want to use that term. You don't need a plastic feeder. Just a nice cage feeder like that will allow the water to get to the ground bait really nice and quickly. And fishing a conventional feeder rig can get you out of jail sometimes. If you're in one of the harder sections, certainly in winter, a more conventional rig with a fishing maggot or worm can catch you some extra skimmers and bream as well, depending on the day. However, if you are targeting those fish, what has become evident certainly over the last 12 months is that targeting those fish on a conventional method feeder can be best. Now the reason for that is because over the last probably 12 months or so, there has been an explosion of small fish, and those fish are really too small. Unless you're going to catch them in a massive number on the feeder, they're a little bit too small to be catching to try and win a section or win the match. So a conventional feeder rig has really, it's not been as effective because of those fish, and that's why a more conventional method feeder has been better for targeting those better bream and better skimmers, just by fishing bigger baits like a wafter or a banded pellet. Now when we talk about baits for Barston, a lot of it revolves around the micro pellet. Simple as that, and that's because we're targeting carp, we're targeting F1s, and more often than not it's with some form of a method feeder. So the simple micro pellets are a key bait at Barston. One of the great things there is that you're allowed to use your own pellets, so there aren't any pellet fishery only pellet rules in force, so that's great. You can use your own micro pellets, and usually, and more often than not, people are coating them in something. So it could be some form of boilie crush, which is, as the name suggests, just crushed boilie, just to give them an edge, and a lot of people use glugs and that sort of thing just to give the bait a bit of a boost. When we talk about hook baits, again, it's the standard carp and F1 baits, so you might be looking at some form of a wafter, okay, in various different sizes if you're targeting the F1s, and the carp certainly at certain times of year, but you also want to catch the bream as well. Then smaller hook baits like a 4mm or a 6mm type bait can catch those fish as well. But if you are targeting carp, I do know some anglers, and it does get specimen fished quite a lot by the carp anglers, then by switching to a larger hook bait like a 10mm or even a 12mm can single out those better carp. If you're going to be using ground baits, I've never used a cereal mix at Barston, so it's always been about fish meal. So any sort of fish meal type mix will stand you in good stead, because, you know, like I said, it does get heavily carp fished as well, so these fish see a lot of fish meal type baits, a lot of carp baits, a lot of crushed boilies, that sort of thing. So whilst it is a very, very well known match fishery, it does hold a lot of carp fishing events as well. As regards access, down the left hand bank, down the roadside, you can drive all the way down there and drop your kit off behind your peg, which is ideal, and that really applies to pegs about pegs 80 to 124. And then down the right hand bank, which is the river bank, you do have to walk down that bank. So you've got peg 1 right in the corner, the first one that you come to, and then right at the bottom is usually peg 60, which is usually the last one in the match on that bank. So you will need some form of a wheel kit. It's a nice hard surface path, it's no hassle pushing a barrow down there. It's all level as well, it's all flat, so you will want to take a barrow with you if you are heading there in a match. I've got to openly admit that it is one of my favourite venues, and it does host its own competition as well. It's the Barston Masters, and that takes shape in the form of qualifiers. There's one qualifier each month, and the qualifiers from each one of those qualifiers goes through to a grand final, which is in November. So that's a fantastic competition if that's something you might want to check out. They do have a very comprehensive website. I'll put the link below for you, so that will give you all the fishery rules, and it'll let you know about the upcoming matches that are coming there, and there are some photographs of the fishery as well. But it is a fantastic fishery, and if you're heading there or you've been there, then please comment below, let other viewers know what you think to it. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more in this series, don't forget to hit subscribe. And if you want to see more coaching tuition style videos, just have a look at my other channel just there, Patron TV. Thanks for watching, really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.